You've tuned in to T.C. McCarthy, the most entertaining and handsome science fiction author on video. Thanks for tuning in. Again, I always start out my videos this way. Buy my book, July 2nd of 2019, it comes out. Tyger Burning from Baen Books. Pre-order it and you'll really help me out. I did a video here, explaining why that helps me out. But definitely pick it up now if you have the chance. What are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk about more about kind of science fiction weapon systems. It's one of my favorite topics. I'm a big Traveler fan, the role-playing game Traveler, and a lot of these concepts come out in that kind of role-playing game system, but they're also present throughout. You pick up, name a science fiction book, any science fiction book, and these things are there. One of the things that I really hate in science fiction are lasers. And when I say I hate them, what I'm talking about is they're very often, they're not represented, especially in movies, they're not represented accurately, right? Lasers, when you're talking about lasers and the way lasers are used in ship-to-ship combat, it would essentially the laser would actually act, in most cases it would be invisible, right? You're not going to even see the laser, and it's essentially a beam, a continuous beam, not this short, powerful pulse that causes an explosion, right? So I really hate the way they're portrayed in science fiction movies, and so it's left a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to using them in my books. Now, when you're talking about laser use as a personal weapon, some sort of handheld laser that your soldiers are going to use and carry into combat. I hate the way they're portrayed there too as well. Star Wars, for example, I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. Star Wars is fantasy. It's not science fiction, it's fantasy. The way laser blasters are used in that movie is ridiculous. And what you would see in terms of using them as personal weapons on the ground is that the laser would start to lose energy very quickly. Air is a horrible medium to transmit lasers, especially if it's humid or, God forbid, raining. Your laser is going to essentially be mitigated by dust particles, by invisible things, compounds in the air that you can't even see. And troops will be, one of the things I love about Travelers, there's this concept of the anti-laser aerosol. Troops can just pop smoke, and all of a sudden your lasers are useless in terms of weapons. So again, I'm not a big fan of lasers, never have been. You probably won't see a lot of it in my science fiction. What you will see a lot of, however, is plasma. And if you've noticed, as I do these videos, I need my glasses for some things, and so I pop them on and off, and you'll see quick cuts where I've got them on and then they're off and stuff. I apologize for that. But plasma. Plasma is one of my favorite kind of weapons systems, and that has a lot of problems with it. I'll grant you that. For example, if you think about how plasmas are generated, essentially you're taking gas and stripping of it of its ions and superheating it, and then shooting that right to cause damage. Plasma torches exist, so plasmas are hot jets of gas that can cut through metal, but they don't have a lot of range. Almost the same problem as lasers. As soon as you start shooting a plasma jet out, it starts to dissipate, expand, lose heat, and so you've got to be basically right up close to somebody if you want to use a plasma weapon today, when we're talking about things like a plasma torch. Now, when we get fusion reactors, that could change, because now you're talking about superheated plasma that are going around inside the reactor itself, and if you have some sort of way to vent that as a weapon, which is what I do on ships in my science fiction book, then you're talking about using this stuff in space in a vacuum. There's going to be very little air to interfere with the plasma. It won't lose its heat as fast as it would in an atmosphere, and it's used essentially as a point defense weapon to shoot out a barrier, a hot gas barrier that detonates incoming missiles and prevents small particles from hitting ships, those kinds of things. Now, the cool thing about plasma weapons is that we may have conceived of a way to develop, at least at some point in the future, a handheld troop kind of plasma weapon. It's probably not at this point going to be carried by a guy, but on a vehicle, on a ship, or something like that. Here's the problem with using plasma weapons on the ground carried by a man. Generating the hot plasma is almost impossible unless you invent some sort of backpack fusion reactor, right? And that's kind of a concept in some of these silly science fiction-based games where the characters have this massive power armor with a small fusion reactor on their back. Nonsense. That just is not going to happen. So, I'm not buying that as a concept. If you look at my earlier book, the trilogy Germline, plasma weapons are on the battlefield, but they are, again, massive fusion reactors with big tubes that shoot plasma like a fire hose kind of thing. So it's not something that's handheld and man-portable. In every case, it's ground-based in some sort of massive base, or it's a smaller version carried on some sort of big APC or vehicle. However, there is a plasma weapon in Tyger Burning that is man-portable, And the way it gets its hot plasma, I'm not going to give away the secret. In fact, you don't get the secret to how it works until book 2. But I will say that one of the biggest problems with plasma weapons held by individual soldiers or used in any weapon system is that, as a matter of fact, is the heat. So in Tyger Burning, when this plasma weapon is used, the first time it's an alien weapon, and the main character Mong fires this alien weapon, and he's not ready for it, and the heat melts all the surroundings, starts to melt part of his suit. He's not ready for it because these things are super hot gas. We're talking about gas is the temperature of the sun, and that's a big hint. So you've got to figure out a way to armor your people to be ready to deal with those massive amounts of heat. So we're talking about materials that don't yet exist necessarily, although they may. If you look at shuttle tiles, ceramics, those sort of things, those are going to be like the kind of materials you're going to have to work with, but that's never portrayed in these science fiction systems, games, or role-playing games or video games. So it's not really handled in a way that makes me feel good, but I try and handle it the right way in my book. Now, getting back to what I said earlier, that we're on the cusp of developing something that could work. There's this weapons concept called Marauder from the early 1990s, and it's disappeared now. I don't know what the status of it is. I believe it started at Lawrence Livermore lab, and essentially what it is you basically create a magnetic toroid, right? And you shoot this toroid. In the center of the toroid is a bubble of plasma, and it can travel at least some distance. So we're talking about farther away than a plasma torch, right? Now we're talking about a weapon system where you can reach out and touch someone, and when it hits the object that is its target, it actually impacts with a measurable amount of kinetic energy. In fact, I believe the kinetic energy is about 5 pounds of TNT going off, so that's not small. Now, I'm not sure of the range of that thing at this point, the Marauder, and like I said, the research on that topic, there's no recent research that I could find. I could be wrong. If you find something, please mention it in the comments. But that's how we're going to get ground-based plasma weapons, is something like that. Some sort of magnetic containment vessel to keep that thing coherent and together so that it can reach out for long distances and maintain the heat and the density of the hot gas. And I just think that's a really cool concept. If you look at the Traveler role-playing game, one of its kind of systems that is derived from Traveler is this game called Striker, and it deals with miniature combat. And there's a whole table on plasma artillery. Now, it's not clear how plasma artillery would work. This is a line of sight weapon we're talking about with Marauder, but we're getting there. When you're talking about something like Marauder, now we're starting to get there. And so the question I have is, could you lob these toroids in an arc to reach out and touch someone on the other side of a mountain? If that's the case, then we're talking about plasma artillery, maybe not in our lifetimes, but in the future. Scary. That is scary stuff, but it's also really cool for me. Anyway, that's all I've got on plasma weapons and how I hate lasers. Definitely read my book, coming out July 2nd. Buy it now, pre-order it, and help me out. Tyger Burning, coming out from Baen Books. End transmission. Hey, TC McCarthy here, the most eclectic and entertaining science fiction author on YouTube, maybe even the internet. Thanks for watching this video. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. As usual, buy my books. I've got a new one coming out in July, and I'll have a giveaway coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. Appreciate you subscribing to my channel, and please, 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 please don't forget to click that little bell icon so that whenever I upload new content, you get notified. Thanks again. See you soon.